I'm Ken McLeod. I'm the policy director for the League of American Bicyclists. I want to thank everyone for coming to our webinar today about the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program. The Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program is a grant program from the United States Department of Transportation that communities can apply to directly. And it's a really important program that was created by the last transportation bill. It has been funded with $5 billion over 5 years. This is the last year that is currently funded. So we are looking forward to a new transportation bill in the fall when the current transportation bill expires. And that might be an extension of the current bill, or it might be a new bill. But either way, we hope that this program, the Safe Streets and Roads for All program, is maintained because it really has been helpful to, I think, thousands of communities throughout the United States. And we have also seen a reduction in the growth of fatalities amongst people biking, people walking, people driving, and people who are passengers in motor vehicles. So this program has been part of that reduction that we've seen in recent years. So I've got a few slides, and then we have three speakers from bicycle-friendly communities from throughout the country. So I'm going to walk you through my slides now. So the Safe Streets and Roads for All program is about creating comprehensive changes that improve the safety of all road users. We have seen bicyclist pedestrian fatalities rise dramatically over about the last decade or so, and it's really good to see that come down in the last few years. The League of American Bicyclists, which I'm policy director of, has been around since 1880. We are a membership organization. We're really excited to have all of the communities and people who participate in our various programs, and all the people like you who attend these webinars, who learn and make biking better in their communities. Our approach is to advocate and amplify the voices of people at all levels making improvements for biking, to educate and promote best practices, as we're doing with some of our very successful grant seeking and grant getting bicycle-friendly communities today, and to support and showcase the movement of change makers in their work as we are doing today. Our Bicycle-Friendly America program has four components: bicycle-friendly communities, bicycle-friendly businesses, bicycle-friendly states, and bicycle-friendly universities. We are planning on doing a new bicycle-friendly state ranking this year to build on our last one in 2024. And each of these programs has their own application deadline throughout the year. So if you're interested in learning more, please check out our website for any of those programs. As I said, the Safe Streets and Roads for All program is a grant program. It's a competitive grant program. If you are interested in getting this grant, there are two types of grants that you should be aware of. There are implementation grants that build permanent infrastructure, and there are planning and demonstration grants that create comprehensive safety action plans and demonstration projects for infrastructure or programs that don't currently exist in your community but can improve traffic safety. Planning and demonstration grants are easier to get, much more common, but less money. Implementation grants are very competitive. Last year, I think 75% of implementation grants were not able to be funded. So it's a very competitive program on the implementation side. It's an easier to access program on the planning and demonstration side. When you look at the size of these grants, the average planning and demonstration grant is about $650,000. That is similar in size to some of the transportation alternatives grants that we see, which is another federal program for biking and walking improvements. But the difference is these planning and demonstration grants do not create permanent infrastructure. They create kind of the planning basis for future improvements. When you look at average implementation grant size, it's much larger, around $10 million. So that's larger than transportation alternatives grants. It's maybe similar to some other large competitive funding programs from USDOT, but one program, two very different grants. This year, it's important to know that there is only one deadline. That deadline is May 26th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and there can only be one application per jurisdiction. So this is important if you have overlapping jurisdictions. You're going to need to show that you worked with the other jurisdictions and show that you aren't doing duplicative applications in your community or your region. Another thing to note about this year is the Notice of Funding Opportunity talks about three less favorable considerations for grants, and those less favorable considerations are infrastructure that reduces the level of service, which is a measure of kind of the free flow of motor vehicle traffic, automated enforcement outside of work and school zones and school buses, and new bike lanes that reduce vehicle capacity or impair vehicle movement. And I picked this picture because it's from my city, the city of Roanoke, Virginia. And it is also a bike lane that we were able to implement that in no way reduces vehicle capacity or impairs movement because it goes along a railroad track. And it used to be a very seldom used parking lane. So it didn't impact vehicle capacity or impair vehicle movement at all. And an important thing about all of these less favorable considerations, all of them have those ways to kind of directly address the things that makes them less favorable. So they say what you should speak to if you want to do one of these things. You can do automated enforcement in work or school zones or on school buses. You can do infrastructure as long as it doesn't reduce that level of service. So just knowing that there are ways to do these things without triggering that less favorable consideration, it's good to address that, say you're doing it, tell them that you're doing that, and how you've addressed it. So before I get to our speakers, the last thing I want to note here is we did a look at last year's Safe Streets and Roads for All grants when we similarly had some indication from the administration that they were going to closely scrutinize bicycle infrastructure. But in fact, when we looked at award descriptions, 17% of those award descriptions included bike or bicycle, and that was actually more than previous years. And there's a couple other really complementary to bicycle keywords that came up, such as speed, walking, pedestrian. All of those things showed a really good rate of being funded last year, as well as the Federal Highway Administration's proven safety countermeasures, which includes a variety of things, one of which is bike lanes. So that's to encourage you to do the bicycle and pedestrian and safe street infrastructure that you want to do and address the needs of all road users, which is the goal of this program, in your award applications. And so with that, we have three speakers today. And we have Dustin New from the Michiana Area Council of Governments serving Northern Indiana, also known as MACOG. MACOG includes bicycle-friendly communities such as Culver, Goshen, South Bend, and Warsaw and Winona Lake. Several of those communities have received Safe Streets and Roads for All grants, and MACOG itself has received its own SS4A grant. Then we will have Phil Nitollama from the city of Riverside, California, which is a bronze bicycle-friendly community, knocking on the door of a silver award thanks to its efforts, like the two successful SS4A grants that they'll share today. And finally, we'll have Kaitlen Martin from Roswell, Georgia, which is a suburb of Atlanta that received a SS4A planning grant to create a comprehensive safety action plan that was adopted in 2025. And so with that, I will hand it over to Dustin New.
Thanks, Ken. I don't have any slides, so this will not be very flashy, but lots of information. Quick little background on MACOG. We serve 4 counties in northern Indiana. So it's a total area roughly equal to the size of Rhode Island, but with about a tenth of the population. So a lot of rural areas mixed in with what really amounts to two urbanized areas. Uh, so it creates an interesting mix of both urban and rural that we work with, and different sizes of communities ranging from 150,000 people, down to the smallest one I think is 125 people. Uh, so part of what the Michiana Area Council of Governments do is serve all of those communities within those four counties. Um, we have MACOG because of the roads, the state highways, and one interstate that runs through our area. We have an annual budget of about $18 million a year for road projects. So it gives us a fair amount to work with, but sometimes creates some conflicts, some issues about where that money should be best spent. So that kind of led to the SS4A grant. We saw it, why we initially were attracted to going after it was the idea that, number one, safety is always a concern. Each community has their issues. But, other than our scoring system when projects are submitted, we didn't really have a way to prioritize them. So we saw the SS4A planning process as a way to kind of allow us to better prioritize which projects either are being submitted and requested for funding, or others that maybe aren't even being requested, but we should be prioritizing those from a safety standpoint. And I guess the way I looked at it is allows us as planners to be less reactionary and more proactive in going after things. The other reason, quite honestly, is the money. The grant program itself, $1 billion a year. Yes, it is national, but it's still $1 billion a year. So to go after or have access to that money, and in particular the implementation money, as Ken kind of explained earlier, yes, it is competitive, but you still are at least competing with people that have gone through the program. So it is national, but it's not like absolutely everybody in the area or the country, including state DOTs. They are not allowed to go after this money. So it eliminates them. And then why MACOG went after it, we had probably 3 or 4 communities within our area that were talking about and interested in going after the planning grant. And, as Ken mentioned, the jurisdictional thing, it made a lot of sense for us to just kind of be the entity that did the application and ultimately did the plan. Those other communities were obviously involved, but yeah, we became the actual applicant. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about what we hoped to get out of it. Part of what I mentioned earlier was access to that money, that pot of money for the implementation. We've got some fairly good sized projects, multi-million-dollar projects that are of interest in the community. And finding the funds through our state DOT in particular is difficult at best. So we saw it as a way to, at the very least, to accelerate the timeline that we could get to those projects, but even then to just kind of take it out of the DOT's hands and do it on our own. When I say our own, the communities. That we saw, and I think was part of the intention of the program, was to give back some of the control to the communities. So we agreed with that and saw that as a great opportunity. And then the data from the planning standpoint, that's what we were really interested in, is being able to have not access, but to have a compilation of the data and really be able to convey that to the communities in our area to help them better understand where they should be spending their money, where we're going to be spending our money, and why. And then we had hoped that the plan would actually lead to some kind of longer term evaluation and planning tools and committees within our area. So what did we get out of it after kind of prioritizing those things or focusing on those things? The ultimate plan we see as a great resource for that documents all the data available. It gives a preferences, if you will, I guess, for each of the communities of where they should prioritize their dollars. From our standpoint, from MACOG's standpoint, it allowed us to kind of, I would say, refine the data that we track and review regularly. We created multiple dashboards that are available to the public, updated frequently, so the public has access to the data. And then to try and kind of keep it front and center within our communities, at our policy board, we provide a quarterly report on kind of where things stand. Again, to try and kind of keep that safety aspects of what we're prioritizing front and center. So I think it's created more awareness within our region. It also helped us to identify some priority corridors, again, to kind of help shape where funds are going to be funneled or at least focused. And then, maybe not really a measurable thing, but the relationships we built. There's a big public input part of the process. And so we spent a lot of time and effort out in the community and kind of developing those relationships, sometimes solidifying those relationships, but also new ones. We have a good size Amish population in our region, for instance. And, they don't really have phones, don't have computers, don't have ways to really access a lot of our information. But we spend a lot of time talking with them and now have regular communication with them that we didn't have before. And again, they're a good sized chunk of our community, and unfortunately make up a fair amount of our crash issues because of their kind of special, horse and buggy and bicycles a lot of times. So it's allowed us to kind of build a better relationship with that community. One other thing I'll add, we built into, so my day or my job, I'm the active transportation planner for MACOG, and we built in what we called the pavement playbook. It's a tactical urbanism, but what we chose to do, there's all kinds of great resources on tactical urbanism out there. Not a lot of information on rural applications of that. And again, about 2/3 of our area is really rural. So it was kind of a nice little side project, if you will, that created a resource for the majority of our area to use for doing other demonstration projects and whatnot. So that's kind of my summary. Got lots more to talk about if you have questions, but that's what I have.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for sharing. I was driving back through Amish country in Pennsylvania yesterday, and got to interact with some horses and buggies and some people on bicycles, including, well, I guess they were more like kick scooters with very large wheels. But I think it's a really important point that this funding program is flexible. It has to create a safety action plan if you are going through the planning and demonstration grant uh, part of the program and you don't already have a plan, but you have a lot of choice in how you shape that. So if you want to put a lot of public engagement, you can do that. If you want to focus on dashboards and data analysis, you can do that. It is a very flexible program, kind of within the components that are provided in the notice of funding opportunity. So thank you for sharing, Dustin. And now we'll hand it to Phil from the city of Riverside.
Great, thank you, Ken. I do have a PowerPoint presentation that I prepared. Let me see if I can get that up and running. If you give me 1 second. All right. Um, can you guys see my screen?
It's looking great.
Right, great. Good noon. It's noon over here in California. Good noon, everyone. My name is Philip Nitollama. I'm the city traffic engineer for the city of Riverside, here to provide the presentation in regards to the Safe Streets for All grant program and our experience in that particular program. So this is just a quick picture of our downtown area. This is the Mission Inn Hotel. If you get down here to California, I'd suggest visiting it. There is a lot of activities to do there, and it is a resort, so it's pretty nice. Just some housekeeping items. The city of Riverside is the 12th largest city in California. We're located in the Southern California region. We're a fairly big city. We have 7 wards, so there's like 7 mini cities. And that means that we have to satisfy 7 council members. So one council member represents each ward. We have over 415 traffic signals and 890 centerline miles of roadway that we maintain, own, and manage. So we are in the middle of Riverside County, and there's a big population in the city, a lot of development going in all directions. So just jumping straight into it, the city, we've been lucky enough to receive 2 implementation grants under the Safe Streets for All program. In cycle 2, we received our South Main Complete Streets project, which was $11.1 million in grant funds with a total project cost of 13.9. And then in cycle 3, 2024, we had our neighborhood safety investment project. We got $7.5 million, and the total project cost was 9.3. We were trying to go for the trifecta last year, but our streak broke, so we didn't get awarded last year, but we're applying again this year. So just some more details of our 2023 implementation grant, cycle 2. The South Main Complete Streets project was the infrastructure component. That's where the majority of the funding is going. We're going to convert a street to include more pedestrian and bicycle features. Items 2 and 3 shown on here is for planning components or supplemental planning. We provided some money for our citywide speed limit reduction project to take advantage of some California laws that allow us to lower speed limits in the range of 5 to 10 miles per hour, even if you have the same speed survey. And then this program actually encouraged us and provided us with the reason to develop our own Vision Zero action plan. So we have some money for that as well. All 3 of these programs are underway. The second one is actually going to be adopted at council today, later this afternoon. So our South Main Complete Streets project, it's a main street, but it's 4 lanes, 2 in each direction, no median. The photo on the right shows you that the sidewalk is flush with the roadway. So there are cars that are encroaching into the sidewalk. So as you can imagine, it discourages pedestrians. The other thing is that you don't see any bike lanes anywhere. And so that was some of the goals for our program, was to convert this particular roadway so that it's multimodal increase and encourage active transportation. So we did hire a consultant. I think they're on the line today. It was CR and Associates. So I'm gonna give them a shout out. These are some of the conceptual plans that they prepared for us. We're adding more parking in the middle. We call it zipper parking. And then in addition to that, we're going to be able to designate a separate bike lane or class 2 bike lanes along the roadway. We're going to add safety features, speed feedback signs, and make it ADA compliant with curb ramps, high visibility crosswalks, and audible pedestrian push buttons to encourage an active lifestyle and pedestrian and bicycle on the roadway. Some of the strategies we use to get awarded. So this is something I wanted to share if you're interested in pursuing a grant application. The number one thing I will say is that you have to have a recent action plan. I think the SS4A staff indicated that while there's an action plan that was completed 10 years ago, which is great, justifies the improvements. They favor action plans that are more recent, within 3 years, even within 5 years, because the community is changing and so the environment's changing. So in 2023, we used a local roadway safety plan from 2022. So it was within 1 year. So I think that was scored highly. We also had an environmental document completed, a specific plan that already completed the environmental clearance for our project. And then another item we had was our general plan supported this project. So those three plans, they were all fairly recent within 5 years. We also asked a letter of support from our senator. So he provided a letter of support. He probably was one of the voters for the program and really pushed it to get through and adopted. And so that's another strategy that we used. And then to have that local feel and to really show the impacts of the fatal traffic collision was included on here. There was a recent one, and we included that in our application to show the impact of the improvements and how it'll help reduce or eliminate, fatal traffic collision. So those are some of the strategies that we used. Wanted to share some post-award notification. Just getting to the award is great, but afterwards, there's some things that we learned. I would recommend using the full schedule available if you're going to submit a grant application. Obviously, you can strive to get it completed sooner, but I would use the whole 5 years if possible. The executed grant contract, from the time you get the notification that you're going to get awarded, US DOT is not going to sign the agreement for another year. We went back and forth with them. We had 12 revisions on our contract agreement. Some of them are really minor. We return it back the same day, and we will hear crickets, and it'll take a month for them to respond. So these are some things to expect if you get awarded. The work isn't done. Now you have to execute the program. So that's something I wanted to share. Um, we also received our second grant application. This one is called the Riverside Neighborhood Safety Investment Project. I was vested into this project a little more because the cover photo, I actually used my son who was riding his skateboard to school, and that was his favorite crossing guard. So I really liked that photo. So I put it on the cover and ended up winning. This particular grant had 16 miles of bike lane and 85 intersections for high visibility crosswalks and audible ped push buttons, as well as sidewalks. The bike lanes, they range from class 1, class 2, and class 3. They're all over the board, but they were really helpful for our city, and they were straight out of our bike master plan. So that was the implementation component. And then we pursued $1 million worth of planning money, and we were successful in those. The three of them are listed here. The top one is a feasibility study for a pedestrian bicycle bridge. We needed an intelligent transportation systems master plan. We don't have that. And we also don't have an ADA transition plan. So that was all one grant. So that was great for us. Again, in 2024, as part of our action plans, we used 2023 action plans that were done from two schools. There is an organization in California called Safe Trek that had grant funding to prepare school studies for free for local agencies. So we took advantage of that, and we did two studies, and we used that for our SS4A grant since they were recent and they were collision based. So that's how we got the recent public outreach and community engagement component. One of the studies, our Lonza Elementary School, we worked with the school resource officers. We had some planning meetings. We reviewed collision history. We had a walk audit, and then there were recommendations. So from those recommendations, I literally copied them, pasted them in the Safe Streets for All grant, and then I added this study for reference. And so you can see that we didn't just create those improvements in an office. We actually engaged with the community, and there's also a collision analysis that recommended these improvements. Then there was also a second school study, Liberty Elementary School. At the time, within within a year of the grant application, there was an unfortunate a couple of fatals right in front of the school where a crossing guard was located and the crossing guard had just left. So it was midday and there was a collision there. So again, we added the collision statistics on there to show the impact to our community. The Safe Streets for All grant, for our 2024 one, we had a heavy focus on collisions and we grabbed all of the information from our local roadway safety plan. The top intersections with the highest collisions, you can see them on here with the red and the yellows, included all of those in there and then provided the recommendations for justification. One of the strategies we used, during the webinar recordings, they had a focus for this cycle on disadvantaged community. So the purple area on the map is a disadvantaged community in Riverside. We created a project boundary that looks like the Superman logo, but there's like a piece missing on the left because that piece wasn't uh, considered a disadvantaged community. So we didn't include that piece. And in our application, we said we were 100% within the disadvantaged community area. So I think that was one of the things that they were talking about that they wanted to focus on. So we included that. And then these are our supplemental planning grants, the pedestrian and bicycle bridge over the freeway. A lot of people are looking forward to that. It's just a feasibility study, but that'll kick off into construction. And then our ITS master plan will help us assist with moving cars and also detecting pedestrian and bicyclists in the future, and then also taking care of our ADA community. Strategies to get awarded for this one. We talked about the two schools that were recently completed studies in 2023. The local roadway safety plan in a previous slide, I said it was completed in 2023. We created an update to it and labeled it 2024 to include the disadvantaged community. So that's what we did for that one. We also paid attention to the SS4A webinar series. I attended every single one of those. The most they were dropping hints, and so the hints that they said was the most commonly approved grants are under 10 million. So this time around, we said make sure it's under 10 million. They focused on disadvantaged community, so I said make it 100% disadvantaged community, and then get a lot of letters of support from everyone we could think of. I think we had 10 total. So those are the strategies that we used. Some of the lessons learned, these are very similar, the maximum schedule, execute the contract. You have to be patient. It's going to take about a year from the award for them to sign it. This grant, since it included so many bike lanes, I want to share with you that I received, I think 5 different phone calls from USDOT. Every time it got approved from one division, went to the other division, and they called me, and then the next division called me. Every time there was an approval, they wanted to make sure that we weren't reducing any travel lanes when we were building bike lanes. And this particular grant, that is correct. We didn't lose any travel lanes, but had to confirm that with each one of them along the way. And then the last part, supplemental planning, $1 million worth of planning money is amazing. Even if we got denied for our implementation grant, the planning component itself was $1 million. So that was already a big win. So it kind of, you're not going to get any planning money unless you ask. And SS4A, if they deny your implementation grant, they can still fund your supplemental planning. So it's a strategy that you should include anyway for supplemental planning. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you guys may have. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to share the City of Riverside, California's SS4A grants. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. It's great to hear about the successful grants, and it's also really cool how you showed how the planning grants directly lead to those successful grants, and how you can bundle the supplemental planning with the implementation grants to kind of keep that going and keep that cycle of fresh planning to improve safety, improve accessibility going. I also really liked your focus on those disadvantaged communities. There has been like a little change to areas of persistent poverty and historically disadvantaged communities. But those are available in the notice of funding opportunity for communities that are looking to apply this year. And I know we have at least one question in the Q&A, but definitely if folks have others, please submit those now so that we can get to them after our final presentation, which is from Caitlin in Roswell, Georgia.
Hi. Okay. And can everyone see my slides?
It looks great.
Okay. So, um, the city of Roswell is located approximately 23 miles north of Atlanta. We are fairly suburban, the ninth largest city in the state. We have 5 state routes that run through the city, and our southern border is the Chattahoochee River. And we have 2 persistent poverty areas shown in red here. That makes up approximately 8.7% of our total population. And so we have a good majority, nearly 20% of our residents don't speak English at home. And we are also we were the first community in Georgia to receive bike-friendly community status, and we've held that for 20 years now. And so when it came to our SS4A grant, our local CID came to us and asked if we would be willing to apply if they covered our local match, and we said yes, absolutely. And so we had them put that forward. And in our application, we specified that we were going to be focusing with bilingual outreach with an extremely diverse group of stakeholders in our committee, and that we were going to be focusing on implementing low cost, high impact strategies such as the proven safety countermeasures and research that had been done by Georgia Tech's Center for Research on Transportation. And we had 3 letters of support from our CID, from our local bike infrastructure advocacy group, and our local economic development agency to help put us forward. And we received a $200,000 grant with a $500,000 match to create our safety action plan for the city. With for our actual plan, we had a quarter of our stakeholder group came specifically from our disadvantaged communities, and we focused a lot on doing small pop-ups. We have like a youth day event. We have what we call Alive in Roswell, where we close our downtown street and it turns into like a block party. We showed up there to get information and input from residents. We would go to walk to school day events and ask the students and the parents how they felt about the walking route that they did and if they had recommendations. And then we also had a they call it social pinpoint map online, where residents could go and drop a little pin exactly where they had issues. And we have that map shared right there, showing everything that we've got going on. And so then from that, we got our crash analysis and our high injury network. And we have a very low percentage of our fatal and serious injury crashes compared to the majority that we do have total. Although our consultant did more or less highlight the entire city for our high injury network. But the crashes largely follow along the state routes because that's where the majority of our vehicles travel, obviously. And we are using this to then go forward to, we first tried to get an implementation grant with the last round of funding, and we did not succeed, even though we were ranked highly successful, as mentioned. I think he said 75% of implementation grants don't get funded. So we're trying again for this coming round, and hopefully we'll get funding then. And, and that's all I have. So
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I did not appreciate that Roswell was the first best-performing community in Georgia. So that's an amazing fact to hear, and it's great to hear that. And I'm glad you've been participating for the last 20 years as a community. Um, I, it's also just seeing the data that you present. Well, I unfortunately think it probably weighs against your implementation grant. It does seem like you're relatively safe and kind of under that too high national average per 100,000 people that we have. So for all the communities out there that, you know, might be wondering, my community is safe. Is this still a grant program that could work for me? Certainly on that planning and demonstration grant side, uh, that should not be a barrier to applying. The goal is zero traffic deaths and serious injuries of this program and the traffic safety community generally. So don't let a lack of bad data or a crisis stop you from applying. But I want to thank all of our speakers. We only have one question right now. I have some questions I can ask, but we'll start with the questions in the chat, and I hope some other folks chime in as well. So this person asks if any of you worked with researchers or research institutions or universities in your grants, and if so, how was that structured?
I'm gonna chime in. We do have the University of California, Riverside in the city of Riverside. We work with them on several projects. For our SS4A grant applications, we did request letters of support from them. But that was mainly for the infrastructure improvements directly abutting their college campus. So, as bike lanes or sidewalks or curb ramps or safety related features such as speed feedback signs and rectangular rapid flashing beacon. So that was the extent of their support. It was really for their students. I know last year, UCR, they submitted an application. It was for traffic signal operations research for new technology, and they were trying to determine if emergency vehicles and buses get right of way or green band extension at traffic signals. So the institutions they can apply themselves. So they did submit an application and then they requested the city for a letter of support. So we provided that. And if they were awarded, they were going to do a pilot test on the city's traffic signals. And so that was the extent of our effort and our level of involvement. But I think the question was more for research money, not actually infrastructure. So that part, I don't really have any comments for that. So, um,
Uh, I can add that.
I think I kind of echo the.
Oh, go, Dustin.
Sorry, I just kind of echo some very similar comments. University of Notre Dame is in our backyard, and yeah, they really didn't participate much other than relative to their campus.
So two things I can add. Last year, 22 research universities were funded. It's possible that those were kind of in the example that Phil gave of maybe they were seeking funding for streets adjacent to their campus or doing like a safety action plan for their campus, so not purely research. And then I know in my community of Roanoke, Virginia, when we got our first of two planning and demonstration grants that we've gotten, we partnered with a professor at Virginia Tech who also happened to have kind of consulting business on the side. So they did some traffic camera analysis as part of our SS4A planning and demonstration grant. So again, maybe not purely research like the questioner asked or the person in the chat from UC Davis might be interested in. But there certainly are ways that universities can be involved or professors can be involved. So hopefully you're able to find a structure that works for you. We have another question from the chat about whether or not you enlisted resident volunteers to advocate and promote active transportation as part of your grant.
In Roswell, we sort of did. We had members of the Roswell Moms Facebook group start going out and posting all the time in the Facebook group and basically canvassing their neighbors to sort of get people involved in our safety action plan to make sure that we were getting enough comments and that sort of thing. And then we also had a couple high school students who started getting involved with it as well for I think they were doing it for volunteer hours for their graduation requirements, but they started looking at that, and then I think they started working on their own sort of mini projects that they could work on at the school to help improve safety around the schools.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Some comments, but Dustin, did you have an answer to that question?
Yeah, I mean, I have an answer, yes, but not a lot of volunteers or outside people. The part of we also used a consultant to do the bulk of the work, and they had a public relations person on as part of their team. We also, from MACOG standpoint, planners tend to be kind of introverted, and I'm more extroverted. So it was a lot of Dusty, go do this. So yeah, it was a lot of me.
For the city of Riverside, I think we have many different approaches to that question. We do have a Riverside Bike Club organization that helps out with promoting active transportation. We also recently there's an organization called Blue Zones, and they're promoting, active transportation and healthy lifestyles as well. We have very good communications with two of our school districts. So whenever we need to reach out to the individual public schools, elementary, middle, and high school, we work through them. And they send out mass emails to promote active transportation. So that's the community side. From the city side, we have our own marketing team. So, we will have promotions for, May is Bike Month or something like that, or Pedestrian Month. And then if we have something new, like a diagonal crosswalk, we'll use our own city social media to kind of highlight it and tell everyone about it. And then when we have an opportunity to include some marketing for active transportation, we included in the grant application. So we also work with our consultants to promote it. So we kind of take any and all approaches that we could do to advocate for it. So this past weekend we had a Every Kid Deserves a Bike event. We gave out 100 bikes to fourth graders in Longfellow Elementary School. I gave up my Saturday morning for it, but when the fourth graders received their bike, it was like Christmas morning, and the joy on their face was amazing. And some of the kids, I think there were 5 kids, it was the first time that they started riding a bike and they learned on the spot. It was amazing how much they could learn given, the community support. All their friends are doing it. Now we gave them the equipment, everything kind of lined up for them. And so they just said, let's go for it. And lo and behold, they learned how to bike right there and then. So those are some of our community events. So thanks.
That's amazing. And yeah, I mean, community events are a great part of engaging folks, and that can definitely be part of those plan and demonstration grants and kind of that public outreach that's part of creating those comprehensive safety action plans. So thank you all for sharing how you engage your residents and volunteers in this. We have another question in the Q&A box. This is specifically for Riverside. Since you talked about kind of the bike lane projects and how they checked in on that, were any of your bike lanes initially scoped to remove travel lanes? And did you have to do any adjustment? Or was it always the case that they didn't do that?
So in my first South Main Complete Streets project, it went from 4 lanes to 2 lanes, and that was intended to increase the on-street parking. There was parking concerns within the businesses, and that's why they were encroaching into the sidewalk, as I showed in the photos. So this project, we've been working on it for several years. One of them, we had to get an environmental impact report to add the parking in the middle, and that did take away a travel lane. That was approved under the 2023 cycle. At that moment in time, bike lanes were being added in lieu of travel lanes. And at that point, our agreement was signed. And then, the following couple of years, there was a change in the White House administration. There was a change in some of the guidelines. Since then, US DOT has reached out to us to remove the word road diet from the grant agreement. And they wouldn't have touched the grant agreement if the dates on there were correct. And that's why I was trying to emphasize to use the 5-year maximum. We were trying to be overzealous and say, we're going to get our planning and design phase done in a year. Well, it took them a year just to sign the contract. So by the time they signed it, we had like a month to complete it. We can't do work until the agreement's signed. So after a month, they said you need to reapply for your grant application, and that's what we did. And they said remove everything that says road diet on there. So we did that. We're still working with the US DOT at this point, but we're keeping our original design and we're proceeding forward. We haven't received any communications that we couldn't proceed forward, so we're still moving on. We're just waiting for an update on the dates on our grant agreement. So that's the answer. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And yeah, taking that full 5 years is a good point of emphasis. And I definitely know my city was surprised how long it took to execute their grant agreement. Hopefully that's gotten better as the program's been more established. But definitely something to keep in mind that this money won't appear immediately, and there will be kind of that processing time. I see Sheila commenting about their grant in Connecticut, doing some bike, walk, and roll safety courses and giving out things like helmets and reflectors. I don't see any other questions right now. So we have about 5 minutes left. That's probably a short time for me to ask a question of each of you, but probably enough time for me to ask each of you to share a little closing thought, and perhaps encouragement to people who are watching this and thinking about applying for a Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. So I guess I will hand it in reverse order of the way we presented. So, Kaitlen, would you like to share a closing thought?
Um, I think definitely getting your letters of recommendation from as many people as you can in your community certainly helps, especially if you are a community like Roswell where you are in considered a safe area and don't have high fatality rates.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And Phil?
yeah, I would say go for it. It's work. But it's, it's free money. It's 80 cents to the dollar. I know internally, agencies have budgetary concerns, but if you came up to your council and say you only pay 20 cents to the dollar that we get and it's for the community, I think it'd be very hard for them to say no. So at least the planning component for traffic safety, you're trying to save lives. I don't know who could say no to that. And then if you pursue an infrastructure grant and are not successful, I would say bundle it with planning money, and you may, get half of what you ask for at least, and that's still a win. So I would say just go for it and apply. You never know what'll happen. So
Thank you. And Justin?
Yeah, back in my, I used to be a consultant, and whenever, annually we'd have to put our budgets together and request certain things. And we always, we'd come up with these things. And then it was always, okay, so now how can we tie that into safety? Because if you have a budget request that refers to safety, nobody can deny safety. So, and that's kind of what this is. Um, I kind of echo what Philip said. Go for it. It is a great grant opportunity to do some planning that sets you up for future implementation dollars. And regardless of what you hear and about budget cuts and program cuts and whatnot at the federal level, this is a very popular program, and quite honestly has done a lot of good throughout the country. So I would be very surprised if it just completely goes away. So don't be afraid of that, and like I said, go for it.
Yeah, this has been an incredibly popular program. Communities from every state have participated. Those implementation grants have been very competitive. I would be surprised if this goes away. It could change shape. It could change some points of emphasis. But certainly this year, this has the notice of funding opportunity. This has $1 billion available, and people who are interested should go for it. I know there was a question about universities applying, and I believe Amelia answered that. There's one last question in the chat here as we have a minute left about bicycle boulevards or neighborhood greenways parallel to a high injury street.
That's
Uh,
what we're going for this year.
so yes, go for it. And it's a great idea. I think it probably fits well with some of the priorities of this administration in terms of not reducing the capacity on that maybe higher traffic, high injury street, but giving that safe facility on an alternative route, is maybe very appealing to the current administration and fits well with some of their points of emphasis. So we're right about time. I want to thank our presenters. I want to thank you for all of your work throughout the years to make your communities better bicycle-friendly communities. And congratulate you on your successes in getting these Safe Streets and Roads for All grants. And thank you for sharing those successes with us in this webinar. So thank you all, and have an excellent day and happy Bike Month.
Thank you all.
Thank you.